20 gratitudes. Sometimes I write it. Otherwise, I just use my hands, go through 10. And I learned that discipline, I've shared before, in 1981, when I was a young pastor and hit a year of depression. There was no objective reason to be depressed. The church was going bonkers. The Los Angeles Dodgers were doing well. We had just adopted our first child. A number of things took me through that depression, but the biggest was to every day give thanks for 20 things. Why 20? For me, I guess I needed to dig deep. So I've been doing that every day.
Well, Darrell, what a joy to be with you. You've got us in your home. Thanks for having us here.
Well, thank you. You're welcome. It's great to have you here.
Can you set the scene? I know some people are listening, but some people are watching. Set the scene for us. Like, where are we right now? What does this space mean to you?
Well, this is my study, and it's my sanctuary. So this is the space where I feel most myself in the world.
Yeah.
Right here. And usually I sit in a comfortable chair back here and have my coffee, and this is where I have quiet time. When I'm going to study hard, there's a desk over there, and I move there. But this wall is full of commentaries. So this is a very special wall.
So on an ideal morning, I know that not every morning's ideal, but on an ideal morning, you wake up at the right time and you've got energy in your body and your schedule's organized right. What does morning here look like? What does that rhythm look like for you? If you don't mind, I know it's a private place and we're not supposed to. I know that we're not supposed to tell people about that, but humor me. What does that time look like?
Well, again, I reiterate, like we always do when we share. This is me. This is not a prototype.
Not a prescription for anyone else, but the way God's wired you and the way you've cultivated in a season a meaningful connection point with Him.
Yeah. So our listeners just need to discern what that looks like for themselves. I sit in my chair and I say, Lord, here I am, and will you meet with me, and try to be still for a while. That's sometimes really hard because my mind's racing when I wake up with things from the day before or the days that are coming. So I sit there until I can be present to Him.
How do you know when you've kind of got present?
For me, it's my breathing. I'm not racing anymore.
Yeah.
So like right now.
Yeah.
I'm not running. I'm not pushing. So that means to me, okay, settle down. And then I take out my journal, and I usually I write a few things about yesterday, so that I can remember them. Yeah. The highlights, the things I'm still wrestling with. Write that down, and I do that until it's out of my mind. So it's a kind of a clearing of my mind.
Yeah.
So that when I'm reading or doing something else, I'm not still fiddling with that. Sometimes something will come to mind, and I have these little pieces of paper that I'm going to do something with. So I write that down and just throw it on the ground. Yeah. And then I'll pick it up later. And then I go to a psalm. I read the psalms sequentially.
Yeah, you pick up wherever you ended the day before.
Day before.
Yeah.
And I find more and more that I end up staying in the same psalm for 2 or 3 days before going on to the next one now. So I do the psalms and a psalm, and I've found myself in the last little while writing more about that. So actually, one day you could just take all these journals and you could write a book on praying the Psalms just following those notes.
Yeah, via Darrell Johnson, via Jason Ballard.
Yeah, there you go.
Do you ever do the practice of rewriting the Psalm almost? Or I'll take sometimes portions of it. I know I borrowed this from elsewhere, and try to re-articulate the prayer.
Yeah. That's what I do.
I find that very helpful.
So I usually, not all the time, it'll be, who are you? And so the psalmist will say, great is He to be praised. I write, great are you to be praised.
Yeah.
And so I'll write everything about God in the psalm, and then everything that the psalmist is worried about or praying about in the psalm, write that down. And then now what do I want to pray? And that's when I'll rewrite whatever the psalmist has in there. So it's something like that. Other days it's different things, but and then over on this column will be issues to address someday when I need to do more study on the Psalms. And there's usually something there because I don't understand
At least
phrase.
half them offer up 2 or 3 puzzles.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So when we tell people, just pray the Psalms. Yes, and then warn them.
You made a great cheat sheet that you shared with some friends and myself where you said, hey, if you're going to begin to pray the Psalms, these are good ones to begin with. They don't offer up as much. whether it's contextual challenges or depend as much on historical context or move into territory that might not feel as accessible on Pass One.
Yeah. And people responded well to that. Maybe I should put that up on the website.
Yeah, I could ask the guys if you're comfortable to put this in the show notes.
Yeah, so I avoided the hate Psalms, figuring if you're going to learn how to do the Psalms, you don't want to get to that right away.
Yeah.
You need some help on that. And then pick the Psalms that flowed more clearly, didn't go all around emotionally or intellectually. And pick the Psalms that people know, that throughout the years, these are favorites. So I think I put about 20 down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll put a link to that.
Okay, great.
In the show notes for people. I think that'll be helpful. Great. And helpful to share people, because one of the things I've been thinking about a lot, Darrell, and then I want to come back to hear more about how you spend your morning in here. But we'll say, like, we know that there's some basic building blocks to life with Jesus. His word, rhythms of prayer, rhythms of service, care for others, generosity, and even rest. But sometimes it's so basic. But I wonder if we haven't asked ourselves, how do we really teach somebody who's new to all of this to pray? And there's new challenges, digital distraction and all kinds of maybe contemporary issues, but there's the perennial challenges of so how do you, when you say go and pray, I think about a new believer or someone who's been a Christian for a long time. What do we mean by spend time? That's why I love pressing. And even praying the Psalms, I think it's a great invitation, but even that needs a couple more handles. And I think sometimes we hesitate. I wonder what you think. We hesitate because we don't want to be prescriptive, because each person's so unique. But then sometimes we under commentate, so people find themselves going, am I getting this wrong? I think I'm supposed to be praying in the morning.
Good question.
But how do I do that? How have you found it helpful to invite people into practices in a way that doesn't feel burdensome and they can find their own path, but it's directive enough that they can go, okay, at least I can start here.
Okay. So if someone came to me who's just recently come to Christ and says, I want to pray. I want to learn to do that. I would say, okay, we're going to turn to the Lord's Prayer.
Cool.
The model prayer, which, by the way, I think is Jesus' summary of the Psalms. It's interesting. The Lord teach us to pray, and you would think he was raised praying the Psalms. He would say, pray the Psalms.
Yeah,
he
doesn't. Makes a ton of sense.
He gives the Lord's Prayer, and I've always puzzled by that. And finally, I realized, I think he's summarizing. Take those 6 things of the Lord's Prayer. Read the Psalms.
Yeah.
Your name be praised and your name be exalted. Kingdom.
Yeah.
It's all about the kingdom and the kingdoms. It's all about doing your will.
Yeah.
And then provision for bread. Yeah. Reconciliation, forgiveness. Look at the Psalms about forgiveness. And then spiritual warfare. That accounts for all the enemy Psalms. And now Jesus is naming the real enemy behind the enemies. So I wonder anyway. So I would say to them, I would take a coffee with them or something and explain the Lord's Prayer, and then say, okay, tomorrow just take the first line and pray, Father, hallowed your name in me. And just pray what you think about that.
Yeah.
So that would be one. The other would be to take the prayers of Paul. He's got 2 prayers in Ephesians and one in Philippians, one in Colossians, and show them how Paul prays, and then just say, copy that to the degree that you can. And of course, as you know, the prayers in Ephesians are so deep, it'll take a while to really get that, but they're accessible intellectually. And there are no controversial lines, or you don't have to have a lot of background to understand the vocabulary. So I would do that before you're actually telling someone to pray the Psalms.
Yeah.
So they're used to going. So I guess the way to say it is help people pray by the book.
Yeah.
Just say, okay, you don't have to just make up the prayers. You don't have to think about it. Here's a book. Follow the book. So, be the Holy Spirit strengthen you in your inner person, that Christ may dwell in your hearts by faith, comprehend the incomprehensible love of God, be filled up with the fullness of God. That's a pretty big prayer. So point people to the varieties of prayers that are available. And then when they're used to using the book, and then to start in and show people how to pray the Psalms. Even then, I think we need to coach people. Yeah. I don't think you can just send somebody off.
Yeah, I think it almost needs to be like, so how did it go? And
then
my mind wandered. Oh yeah, that's normal.
Normal.
Maybe you want to jot some things down on the side.
Yeah.
Or I found that I was talking, but words wasn't what I needed. And you introduced them to what maybe stillness looks like in that space. Or I didn't know, feel like I heard God's voice. Okay,
Boy, we're moving into the territory of disciple making in our time. See if you agree. I think more than ever, making disciples is going to involve a lot of one-on-one time.
Yeah.
You can do group discipling, Sunday mornings and small groups and seminars and all of that, but I think it comes down to taking somebody by the hand and having coffee one morning and just opening the book and showing what to do, and then meet the next week and find out what the frustrations were, find out what the blessings were. I remember doing that with a man in Manila. He had big companies. It was a very successful business, but he wanted to learn how to do this. So we would meet on Tuesday morning at the Polo Club in Manila. That'll give you a sense of the clientele of the congregation. And it was so fun. The next week he'd share his frustration or the joy. And it was really neat to see when it finally clicked. And then he just took off.
And I feel like I think we take for granted sometimes that somehow people know this stuff. And where will someone learn, And I think there's something, I'm curious what you think. We've been trying to, as a church, you and I are both part of the same community and share the pulpit with the broader team, trying to invite the church into life with Christ. And I do feel that tension of like, I don't want to be prescriptive in a way that's, there's almost this fear of like, if you begin to describe spiritual practices, even as we've been talking about, that it's like, we're not saying it's the only way, but it's almost like, hey, here's some handles. Start your path like this as you discover in your particular season of life what a morning pattern could look like, or, how you find God in the midst of pain and suffering, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Now, here's just a wild thought. The last sermon you preached on practicing the way of Jesus, I told you was really good. It was on how to shape a rule of life.
Yeah.
And you did that so well. You gave a vision for what a rule of life could look like. You gave some examples, but you kept emphasizing this is going to work differently for everybody.
I even think the term rule of life doesn't work for everybody. Like, I think for some people, it's like, that's not a Bible word.
No.
I mean, it's a Bible idea to pattern your life in order to sustain devotion.
Word. Yeah.
But it's an idea. It's like, here's a framework. Hopefully it's helpful. Yeah. But I feel this tension right now of like, these things aren't the ends. The end is unchanging. It's life with Christ. It's a mind more tuned to him and life with his presence. But I think people are really asking, like, teach me how, though. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. So back to what I was going to say about that sermon. I told you right after.
I'm just trying to get out of you talking about my sermon.
It was so good. It was quintessential you in a lot of different ways, but you gave a lot of freedom, but called people to it. It was just really good mix of that. Now, what would have been ideal, and we probably couldn't do it in that sanctuary, would have been to sing a song or something like that. Maybe hold communion off for 5 to 6 minutes and say, hey, how's this registering?
Yeah.
Either turning to people in little groups of 3 or 4, or allowing for someone like one of the other staff to roam in the sanctuary when someone puts a hand and you give a mic and the person says, I don't get it. What did you mean this? I think we could have done a lot of one-on-one.
Or almost deserves a seminar or like a Saturday container for those that want to, to gather the willing and say, I know that as I understand this right, this isn't informed by Jerry Sitzer's commentary on this stuff, but in the early church, 2nd century, 3rd century, they're introducing people to the rule of faith. This is what we believe, but also a rule of life. Like, this is how to pattern your life. And that a new believer, I think that they delayed baptism quite a while, actually, because they're saying, hey, we want to help you establish this countercultural lifestyle and ethic and belief. And of course, we don't want to create barriers to entry. I think that's the fear now. It's like, we don't want to put a barrier to entry to the gospel. And I really affirm that wholeheartedly. But somewhere in the process, we've lost the tutorials of helping people discover those patterns that can anchor you deeply in life with Christ.
Yeah, I agree. So what does that mean for pastoral ministry? Well, holy moly, it's hard to do in a big church.
Yeah.
Unless you have a big staff, but somehow building some one-on-one or one-on-three.
Yeah.
Some real.
Some of it can be peer-to-peer, I'm sure, as well.
Sure.
Like, discover this together.
Someone who's down the road a little bit further.
Yeah.
Can do that. Yeah. So
let's go all the way back to you.
Yeah.
You got, this is how I'm sorry for how my mind works.
That's all right.
We got as far as Psalms. And then what? So you've prayed through a Psalm. You've written about what it says about who God is.
Yes. And what the psalmist is asking for.
Yeah.
And what do I need to ask for then? And then off at the side, questions I need to look at another time. I don't understand that word or why that reference to that historical place. I don't remember it.
Yeah.
And put that there. Then to shift to someplace else in Scripture.
So in the Psalm, it is primarily a prayer exercise over a study exercise. Obviously, there's study that informs it, but you're using that as like avenues of prayer, and whether it's intercession or reflection or contemplation, or like that time in the Psalm is space for you to worship God, articulate needs to God. Do I understand that right?
Yes. But you know me well enough, it's also study.
Yes.
I can't separate those out.
Yes.
Yeah, so it'll be, well, you can't see it. My writing's so small. Each day there are just these different, let's take last Saturday. It was Psalm 25, and I had 4 columns. I was taken by the word sake, for your goodness sake, for your name's sake. I wrote that down and go, wow. I have to keep remembering, for the sake of your own glory, you're going to answer this.
Wow.
And you can imagine where my mind went with that. I was taken by the use of the word soul, so I wrote all those down. And it ends with guard my soul. So I write down the ways in which my soul needs to be guarded right now.
Yeah.
And then some prepositions. I was taken by, you know me, prepositions in the Psalm. To, in, for, toward. To you I lift my soul. In you I put my trust. For you I wait. Toward you my eyes are continually focused. So, and then the last one was the fellowship of the Lord is for those who fear him. And the Hebrew word is sod, S-O-D, and it means the circle of God's intimate counselors that he meets with. And I got, oh Lord, can it really be that if I live in the fear of you, which I take as a positive thing, I can live in that kind of intimacy? And then I realized that's the new covenant.
Wow.
That's promised to everybody.
Yeah.
So you can see my heart just went crazy with that. So I just let the text lead me where I didn't think I would go.
Yeah.
I wasn't preoccupied with my soul, but the Psalm made me. Yeah. And I just trust that the Holy Spirit's leading me to the right Psalm for the day. Now, on that note, I'll read a Psalm and go, there's nothing for me today. So I go to the next one.
Yeah.
I've only had to go 3.
Usually. That's great.
And I go, oh, okay, I'm landing here.
Yeah.
And just give yourself the freedom to do that. So then I try to read in another part of Scripture.
Yeah.
So that I'm just growing in the Word. And like right now, I'm just reading through the Gospel of John again. And whoa, you know how well I know John, but man, every day I go, I didn't see that. Or I did, but I've forgotten that. Or ordinarily it's writing down, Lord, help me live in this reality that you keep showing me. I don't feel like I'm living like that. I am right now in my chair, but please help me by lunchtime to still be living there.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. And then gratitude is the end.
Okay. Tell me about that.
20 gratitudes.
Wow.
Sometimes I write it. Otherwise, I just use my hands. Go through 10, 1, 2, 3, and 20. And I learned that discipline, I've shared before, in 1981, when I was a young pastor and hit a year of depression. There was no objective reason to be depressed. The church was going bonkers. The Los Angeles Dodgers were doing well.
Come on.
We had just adopted our first child, and he was such a joy. But anyway, a number of things took me through that depression. But the biggest was, I don't know who coached me, to every day give thanks for 20 things. Why 20? For me, I guess I needed to dig deep. So I've been doing that every day since then.
Are you ever surprised by what comes up in the gratitude list? Like surely some of them are consistently the same. Sharon and our home and provision,
friends,
and then,
colleagues.
Does anything ever surprise you? Like even the last couple of days, what's come up that maybe is unique to the season or
that's
your
good.
Heart's processing?
It's usually somebody that I didn't anticipate meeting, or an encounter. Like in this building, we have 54 units here, and an encounter with someone I haven't seen for a while, and wow, thank you for Mrs. Chen. There's not a Mrs. Chen, so I can use that name. What a sweet encounter.
It makes you realize there's a lot of beauty in a 24-hour pass on planet Earth.
There's a lot.
My daughter Mary, we do like roses and thorns at the table. Do you know that, like highs and lows, like roses and thorns?
Oh, that's good.
One high, one low. And Mary will often come to the end of the day and she'll be like, there was no roses. And I'll be like, we went to Disneyland today. Do you remember that? Oh yeah, besides that though. I'm like, Mary, come on. This happened today. You got to the play date with your friend and all this. And she's like, oh yeah, that was pretty nice. Oh yeah, that was pretty nice. But what Mary gives me as a reminder of how we almost all live is pretty, like we just, like the things that hurt usually occupy the most of our imagination. And if we don't cultivate attention to gifts that are around us, and pause for it, we can miss it.
We can miss it.
Because life's brutal.
And not to put
pain
down any news stations or anything in this next statement, but the first 15 minutes of a newscast is all about who got murdered or someone got beat up downtown or, it's...
Well, I think it's because scientifically and then therefore economically, negative news moves faster, generates more clicks, builds addiction to the news cycle. Therefore, because the media we take in is driven by economics.
Yeah.
So it's always going to exist to breed displeasure, dissatisfaction, or fear. And I don't have a daily practice of gratitude like that. That's really inspiring for me.
It doesn't have to be done in your chair, so to speak. It can be done throughout the day.
Yeah.
And using fingers. Now, I think Sharon does 10. But she's just a constantly more grateful person. She doesn't have to dig.
She doesn't have to work as hard as you do.
I have to work at it. And as you know, we've talked about this before in pastoral ministry.
Yeah.
Why does someone show up to your office?
Usually because they're hurting.
They're hurting.
Or have a complaint.
Yeah. So it's not going to be, hey, I wanted to come by and just tell you, well, once in a while, tell you how wonderful things are. But yeah. And so we're bombarded with the downside of life, with the brokenness of life.
Yeah.
So to keep perspective and stay above that, gratitude is the way to go.
And when you're going through seasons where you need to bare your soul before the Lord or process things, do you find that happens within the containers that you described? Mm-hmm. Or do you sometimes find that you need to, do you have any like triage prayer rhythms? Like, okay, I really need to process something with God. So I know walking's a big part of your patterns of life, but what else when you feel like there's either more to process with God? Where do you go for that?
Well, I'm an introvert by nature, so usually, and perhaps wrongly, I'm going to figure out how to do this on my own. So it's usually a walk, and I walk down. There's a Starbucks that's 20 minutes away, and I walk down there and I take a pad of paper with me, and along the way I'm just sometimes crying out or just moaning or, Lord, what do I do about this? And then get my coffee and then sit down at the chair there and whip out my little piece of paper and pencil and try to write down what I think I'm hearing him say. And then I got 20 minutes back to kind of put things together again. That's a big one. Take a walk and listen to music. There are a couple of singers that just really sing to my soul, no matter what I'm wrestling with. And I got about 5 or 6 songs.
I'm learning how musical you are, like how much music, like seasons have soundtracks for you.
Yeah, they do.
A couple songs that become the soundtrack of a season or vocalize what you're praying.
Yeah. So I would love to be on the music team.
It's not too late. It's not too late.
Singing really does well for my soul. I don't sing sitting in here. And I wondered about that because the psalmist, boy, 2 Psalms ago, it was sing, 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 about 6 sings. And then I wrote down, Lord, I don't sing enough. But I'm embarrassed to sing alone in my room.
I feel
funny.
that. Yeah. I feel that.
But to play a tape or a song on the phone and listen to it, I find myself singing along then if I know it really well, more than Abel or, there's honey in the rock.
Yeah, yeah.
On that note, then we can go on something. If it's really distressing, Sharon's my soulmate, or I'll call a friend. I've called you at times to call others and say, hey, can you get time? I'm really wrestling.
Yeah.
I can't figure this out.
Yeah. It's such a grace to hear the voice of someone else help bring perspective or even just help offer it to the Lord when we can't get out of our own heads.
That's a good expression. It's just stuck.
I'm trying to name when I'm stuck sooner.
Good.
Like I know that happens in retrospect. I was stuck. But I'm trying to go like, okay, I'm stuck here. Like I'm just in the loop. How do I bring some godly perspective to this? And again, for my wiring, it sounds like maybe for yours, it's the voice of a friend. I'm sure for others, it can be different things, but that can often be it. Sometimes I just ask someone like Chris, am I off on this one? And he'll be like, yeah, you are. And it's so helpful.
That's a good friend.
Yeah, he will. He'll be like, and he's usually a bit pastoral about it. He'll be like, not entirely, but yeah.
Yeah, that's his style.
Yeah, it's very, very sweet. This has become almost an annual rhythm that towards the end of the year, this particular episode will probably be released close to New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. We were on last year together a few weeks earlier, but around this time. And I'd love just to hear, and I'm sure that many people listening would love to hear what this last year's been for you. I know it's a huge question. But how are you and Sharon doing? What are some things that stand out to you as you look at the last year? And maybe in that we can pause a little bit in the last couple months and some of the stuff that you've been learning and experiencing.
Okay. Well, for Sharon in particular, and then for me, as a lot of taking care of her mother who lives across the border. So Sharon's down there at least once a week, sometimes twice. And it's going well. We're making progress on helping her get all kinds of financial stuff put together and getting her adjusted. So that's been a dominant note.
Yeah.
We've had opportunities to be at different retreats, pastorate retreats and with Alpha retreats. And Sharon's been able to go with me on a lot of those. That is really nice.
This time last year, had she just retired or was approaching retirement?
Yeah, she retired September a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys have just passed a full year in this new season.
Yeah. And it's been fun to see right now, while we're talking, she's working with an English and second language ministry downstairs, and she'll be taking that over. It's just so fun to watch her.
That's amazing.
Discovered a whole new call. Wow. It is really clear it's a call. And so, so she's found her new way post-retirement. So we've had a chance to be in a lot of different contexts with different pastors, pastoral events, maybe too many, as you might have observed. It was quite a year.
It was a lot of it's a lot of good things, but it was a very full year.
It was a very constant full. I got to be with the Sea Rock group and all those. We got to go to London to Alpha International.
Yeah, the leadership conference.
Oh my goodness, that was a powerful time.
It's incredible, isn't it?
And mostly, got to hear in person Tom Holland, the historian, not the musician.
Did you notice that on Sunday with the chuckle?
Yeah,
because you quoted Tom Holland, and then everyone's just thinking about Spider-Man.
Yeah. See, if I'd have been on top of that, I would have gone right away. Tom Holland, Spider-Man. No, at any rate. And then we had a week a vacation to visit some people from the way, have family there. And so they took us around England, and we fell in love with the pastoral landscape of England. Came back, I think went right to Sea Rock. Yeah. And then we, in July, went down to Sydney, Australia.
Well, right before you went to Sydney, you recorded, did you do Genesis? What class did you do? Parables.
Parables, and the week before.
And that's available now for free online. Yeah. So you did 4 days of lecturing, about hour and a half or 2 hours and it was great. And then you literally went from there onto
Friday
a plane
afternoon, went on the plane to Sydney,
to be part of Hillsong Conference.
which was wonderful.
Yeah.
I didn't expect it to be so wonderful. They were so hospitable to us. We were so welcome. We felt like we were part of the family right from the beginning. And it just clicked. It was just one of those times when I was the right person at the right time.
Yeah.
And opened a number of doors for pastors who want more help on preaching and just thinking through how to study Scripture and how to teach Scripture. So, and then I got sick at the end after my last sermon. I flew home kind of yucky.
Yeah.
And got home and tested with COVID and had a week of that. The doctor, and I was really having a hard time breathing and coughing. And the doctor thought, well, I'm having an asthma attack.
Okay.
And then towards the end of that, I was getting harder and harder to breathe and discovered I had to go to the hospital and discovered I had blood clots.
Did the doctors figure that those blood clots came from like having COVID, or was that something that maybe was there before? Or like,
Good question. That's what I'm still in process on hearing from. I've had, as you know, tons of tests, and I'll find out in 3 weeks what they conclude. They don't think that the COVID caused the release of the blood clots. Okay. I've got some other issues.
Okay.
So that's why I have to watch it.
It's been such a journey. It was pretty high, and then probably felt like a little bit of a crash. Like,
well, I think I said to you, I feel like my world got rocked.
Yeah.
Sharon uses the expression, the rug pulled out from under my feet.
Yeah.
Now, thankfully, when the rug pulled out from under my feet, the rock was still there.
Yeah.
But Jesus, the rock, in case anybody didn't get it. But my world got rocked in a lot of ways. Physical recovery was relatively quick, like 7 or 8 weeks, and I think I'm physically fine. It's just the mental and emotional state is still working my way through. I'm doing a whole lot better. You can tell from a couple of weeks ago when we visited here in the room.
Yeah. And in that time, you had to cancel a ton of commitments and even personal projects that you wanted to make headway on. And I know those things felt like, I know you hate letting anyone down. No one felt let down, but that feeling of, I'm not there for this commitment I made or this person. And then for you to spend 2 months or more not teaching it. When was the last time you hadn't preached for that long?
Never.
So how many weeks between sermons?
The last sermon I preached was July 12th. And then I preached this Sunday, December 1st.
August, September, October, November. So just over 4.5 months, almost 5.
Never gone that long.
And
the longest I'd gone before would have been 5 weeks.
And that, how have you been able to process what it feels like to have something that's such a regular pattern for your, not just ministry to others, but it shapes your life with God. But the reality is, as much as we say preaching, don't mix your Bible study with your preaching, like you can't, like when you're regularly preaching, it becomes so much about your life with God. And that's not all negative. I mean, you have to be aware of it, but it's just the nature of it. To have that pulled away, how are you processing that experience of almost 5 months not being able to do the thing you felt like you're most made to do?
I'm still processing. I'm still trying to understand, but I'm doing better. Yeah. At the beginning of that, there was just no way that I could preach.
Like the limitation was just so...
It was so clear mentally. I couldn't focus. In my quiet time, the Lord gave me grace. I could focus. But beyond that, I couldn't. Even during this whole time, I'm getting invitations for other things. And I just couldn't cope. I couldn't think through what kind of answer I would give. So making decisions was really hard. Staying focused was really hard. I'd hoped to start writing on John. I couldn't do that. I might be able to now. Even so, it's still hard to sit down and do it. So it was just a whole different mental space. And So much so that I felt and said to the Lord, if I'm done, if I'm not going to be preaching regularly again, I'm okay because I can't do it. So I didn't feel I could do it. There's the energy that goes into writing and researching. As much as I love that, I just couldn't get there.
Yeah.
Then there's that energy of getting ready to be present. You know, is that making sense?
Totally. Yeah.
To be present.
They're both massive spends.
Huge. I did not realize until this experience how massive that is. And I couldn't get there. And then, of course, then there's the moment. So leading up to preaching last week, I talked, I was going to press through. The doctors said, actually, don't live with a press through mode or a push through mode because you could backfire. But I felt the Lord was saying, no, go ahead and do this. So even up to Saturday, I know I'm going to do this, but I don't have it. And then Sunday morning, it came, and it seemed to work.
Yeah. It was great.
And I felt good about that. But interestingly, on Monday, it wasn't like, okay, I'm ready to go. It was, I got to pull back again. So it's hard to articulate where I am in that. Now, I want to say the positive thing about that is, how to do this. God is Trinity. God is just so much bigger. This space in which I live now is just God saturated like never before.
Tell me more about what you mean by the space you live in.
Mentally. Okay, I'm surrounded by books. I look over, these commentaries are going to stay a while. I look at over on the shelves over there of these other precious books, and I go, I don't need them anymore. I know God. Now I'm going to learn something if I pull a book out.
Yeah.
But it just looms so large in my experience now. And then so watching news or watching television, and I hope this doesn't sound flippant, it's so shallow. It's so like, my hobby is reading on politics. And I don't mean this, but dear God, these people are just so out of touch with reality. This isn't where it is. It's with you.
It is interesting how the mix of profound pain or loss, or facing the possibility of loss, if a loved one's sick or you're processing, am I going to preach again? And a revelation of God and his work it feels like it's too small of a word, but it gives great perspective. Like it's hard to care about some of the things you care about when you're faced with a bigger view of God, but somehow also pain or the possibility or reality of great loss. Just some of the things that used to matter less.
Just or not at all.
Yeah.
But a lot less. Yeah, so it's hard to articulate what that space is. We sing a song, "As I Walk from Earth into Eternity." There's a little phrase there. I think that kind of captures it for me. I don't think I'm going to go into eternity soon. Almost did.
Yeah.
But that's what it feels like. That this space is being stripped of what is not going to matter one day.
It's like veil getting thinner or cracked open more type experience.
Yeah. And I haven't lived in this space before. I don't want to lose it. That's why I'm being really cautious about what I'm going to do the next while. I don't want to get back to that life of constant preparation, which I've lived, as you've seen, for a couple of years. I don't want to. I've tasted a couple of days of real rest. Not the whole day. Morning or an afternoon. And I go, wow, so this is what the rest of God is. wow, this is really beautiful. And so I say to the Lord, I don't want to now live where I have to wait another year or two to experience this again.
Wow.
Can I experience this every day? And I don't hear the answer, but I think the answer is, well, if you'll watch how you live.
What's filling your heart? I know this has been released after Christmas, but we're recording this at the beginning of December. As you're thinking, are you doing an Advent reader or anything like that? Or I don't know if you're...
We are, Sharon and I are reading each morning an Advent reader, yeah.
What's
and it's really good.
What's happening in your heart and mind as we approach Christmas, and even prepping? We're living in the narrative of Christmas in Matthew and Luke as a church. What's filling your mind and heart about the incarnation or God's work in the world revealed through the Christmas narratives?
That's a hard question to answer. I hope that this is not too vulnerable. I'm still struggling with being able to articulate what it is that I am thinking about. The doctors tell me this is trauma. I don't think about the fact I almost died. I don't go back to that moment.
Yeah.
But the doctors say your body does.
Yeah, your body is still...
And so there are moments of still disorientation on that.
Yeah.
So unlike other Christmases where I could have answered that really straight, I can't. I think, though, that the big thing is just the massive love of God, that he would do this. In John 3:16, God so loved the world, cosmos, and for John, cosmos is human society organized in itself without God. That's what it means, the cosmos. Look, the cosmos is all around us, total organizing without God. And God so loved a world that doesn't know him or love him that he gives his son. So this whole movement of God, of giving himself away for people who don't want him or don't know that they want him. So just gripped by that. I look at people. I ride the train or the bus coming home yesterday, just looking at people and go, oh, just wish they knew just how much they're loved.
Yeah.
And that's what experience, how much I am loved. I am a loved person. And that's why I say that if I'm told I can't preach anymore, I don't think I'm going to be told that. So it's probably safe to say I'm loved. And
Beautiful.
So
I was thinking, like, even as you're sharing John 3:16, that God's way for us to get to him involved him moving towards us.
Yeah.
That even in the saving act, his posture was to lean towards.
That's right.
Like the means by which we get the shot at leaning towards him is initiated by him coming closer to us.
Yeah.
It's a stunner.
Preach it.
Yeah. That's where I'm trying to live. Just what does it mean to live in a world that God is not leaning away from, but is leaning towards?
Yeah. And now as pastors, we want that for our people.
Yeah.
I want that. I want the lawyer who's working today on a case just to feel he or she's noticed, wanted, and God is there and probably saying, I can help you.
Yeah.
I can make this case work.
Yeah. Well, I'm really grateful for this time together.
Thank you.
And I'm thankful that you would let us into a bit of your experience the last number of months. I'm thankful for your increased health, and I'm so glad for that. But I also appreciate you letting us have a window into where you're at right now. You know, the story has been written. It's not fully done. And by story not being fully done, I mean the health story.
Yeah.
Not your story.
I got that, yeah.
Your story, we got hopefully some more decades to do our annual conversation here. But was there anything else on your heart that you most want to share before we end?
Well, I've been taken in reading the Christmas story, and then anticipating what goes beyond Christmas, of course, but been taken by the role of John the Baptist again in the Christmas story. So after Mary is told she's going to bear a child as a virgin, she goes to her cousin Elizabeth's home, older woman who we know is also giving birth to a child in a miraculous way, not the same way, of course, as Mary. But Luke says that the baby inside Elizabeth, and the baby turns out to be John the Baptist, that the baby in her womb leaped in her womb. And then later on, behold, when the sound of your greeting reached my ears, the baby leaped in my womb for joy. That's, John is probably in his 6th month of gestation there. And I'm taken by the fact, John the Baptist began to witness to Jesus in utero.
Wow.
And that was his call, the call on his life before he was born. I can relate to that because, as you know, I met Jesus as a little boy and loved to listen to preaching as a little boy. So the idea that John starts his witness young, and then you can read on, of course, what he then goes on to talk, the actual witness that he does give. But I was thinking this morning that I wonder if it's worth saying that when Jesus shows up, as he did, now he's in Mary's womb. This is really weird. When he shows up in Elizabeth's space, John recognized that it's Jesus and he leaps for joy. And that's what I'd want for all of us. That when Jesus shows up this season, the first response would be joy. Wow, look who came to my house.
Amen. Let it be so.